He was a millionaire who had everything except love. His little boy was blind, lonely, and desperate for a father's touch. And one stormy night, a poor waitress showed them both the meaning of true kindness. What happened next will leave you speechless. Stick with me to the end of this story. And if you believe in the power of love over money, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Richard Hale lived in a glass mansion on the edge of New York City. From the outside, it looked like a dream. A sprawling house with shining floors, tall windows, and expensive cars parked in the driveway. But inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. 7 years ago, Richard had lost the love of his life, Emily. She died giving birth to their son. And though people said time heals wounds, Richard never truly healed. Instead, he built a wall around his heart. He buried himself in work, becoming one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. People respected him. Some even feared him. But at home, in that cold mansion, he was just a lonely man who didn't know how to love anymore. His son, Ethan, was born blind. Richard gave him everything money could buy: tutors, gadgets, expensive clothes, and even a private music teacher. But Ethan didn't care about any of that. What he wanted was something his father never gave: a hug, a laugh, or simply the words, "I love you, son." At night, Ethan would sit with a photograph of his mother, run his little fingers across her smiling face, and whisper, "Mom, if only Dad could talk to me the way he talks to his business partners. If only he could hold me, just once." Richard never knew his son cried like that. He never asked. He was always busy. One chilly evening, something unusual happened. Richard looked up from his laptop and saw Ethan quietly sitting in the corner, humming to himself. Something stirred inside him, and for the first time in years he said, "Ethan, let's go out for dinner tonight." Ethan's head lifted in surprise. His little blind eyes widened, and a big smile spread across his face. "Really, Dad? Just you and me?" Richard nodded, though Ethan couldn't see it. "Yes, just us." That night, father and son drove to a cozy diner in downtown Manhattan. Ethan could smell the fried chicken, the warm bread, and the sweetness of apple pie as soon as they entered. His heart swelled with joy. Finally, he was doing something normal with his father. But as they sat down, Richard's phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Emergency Zoom meeting with foreign investors. Richard's chest tightened. Business always came first. He glanced at Ethan, then at his phone. He couldn't miss this call. "Ethan," he said softly, "wait for me outside for a few minutes. I just need to take this call in the car." Obediently, Ethan nodded. His little hands felt along the walls until he found the wooden bench outside. He sat there quietly waiting. The sky grew dark. Heavy clouds gathered. A rumble of thunder echoed through the streets. Soon, the rain began to fall. Ethan couldn't see it coming. He only felt the cold drops hitting his face, soaking his hair, his clothes, his tiny sneakers. Shivering, he wrapped his arms around himself. But he didn't move. He didn't want to disturb his father's important meeting. Inside the car, Richard was lost in numbers and strategies. He didn't notice the storm. He didn't notice his little boy sitting helpless in the rain. Inside the diner, a young waitress named Grace Miller was wiping down tables. Her life was anything but easy. Her mother was sick back in Ohio, and medical bills kept piling up. Her landlord was threatening eviction. She barely made enough to eat. Yet, despite everything, Grace had a kind heart. As she carried a tray of steaming coffee, her eyes caught something outside. A small boy, drenched, sitting alone on the bench. Her chest tightened. Without a second thought, she rushed out into the storm. "Sweetheart," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "What are you doing out here in the rain?" Ethan tilted his head toward her voice. "I'm waiting for my dad. He's busy." Grace's heart ached. She took off her apron, wrapped it around his shoulders, and led him inside. The other waiter stared. The manager frowned. But Grace didn't care. She pulled out a chair, dried Ethan's face with napkins, and said, "You're safe now." In the kitchen, there was only one plate left of macaroni and cheese, a dish meant for a paying customer. Grace didn't hesitate. She brought it to Ethan, cut it into small bites, and fed him gently. Ethan's lips curved into a smile. "You're very kind, miss." Grace smiled back, brushing the wet hair from his forehead. "And you're very brave." For the first time that night, Ethan felt cared for. For the first time in years, someone treated him like more than just a responsibility. Meanwhile, Richard finally looked up from his laptop when thunder roared loudly above the car. He glanced outside, and his heart dropped. The bench was empty. Panic shot through him. He jumped out of the car, scanning the street. Then his eyes fell on the diner's window. And what he saw froze him in place. His son was sitting inside, laughing in a way Richard hadn't seen in years. A young waitress was kneeling beside him, feeding him spoon by spoon, speaking to him with tenderness Richard had long forgotten existed. For the first time in his life, Richard Hale, the powerful CEO, the man who thought he had everything, felt utterly small. Because in that moment, a stranger was giving his son the one thing he had never given: love. Richard stood outside the diner window, drenched in guilt. He had left his blind son in the storm while he chased another business deal. And now, here was a stranger, a young woman with no wealth, no status, giving Ethan the kind of care money could never buy. Slowly, he pushed open the diner door. His expensive shoes clicked against the wet floor, but he barely noticed. His eyes were locked on Ethan, who was still laughing softly as Grace wiped his face with napkins. "Dad?" Ethan called out, his little voice filled with joy. "This nice lady helped me. She gave me food." Richard swallowed hard. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He just stared at Grace, who looked up at him nervously, unsure if she was about to be scolded for interfering. But instead of anger, something else filled Richard's chest: shame. He knelt beside Ethan, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have left you like that." Ethan reached out, touching his father's face. "It's okay, Dad. She made me happy." For the first time in 7 years, Richard pulled his son into his arms and whispered, "I love you, Ethan." Tears ran down Grace's cheeks as she quietly stepped away. She didn't want to intrude on this sacred moment. She had no idea that her simple kindness had just broken down years of walls between father and son. The next morning, Richard couldn't stop thinking about the waitress. Who was she? Why had she risked her job to help a boy she didn't know? That evening, he asked around and discovered her name: Grace Miller. She lived in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, working double shifts just to survive. Richard drove to her building, a crumbling place with peeling paint and broken elevators. When Grace opened her door, she gasped in shock to see the CEO from the diner standing there. "I came to thank you," Richard said softly. "You showed more love to my son in one night than I have in years." Grace shook her head. "I just did what anyone should do for a child." But Richard knew it was more than that. He offered her a job at his company, not as a waitress, but as a community relations assistant. "You have a gift," he explained, "a way of connecting with people that my company desperately needs. Please join us." At first, Grace thought it was a joke, but when she saw the sincerity in his eyes, she finally accepted. Grace's first weeks at Hale Enterprises were difficult. Many employees whispered behind her back. "A waitress? In the boardroom," they sneered. One man in particular, Mr. Collins, a long-time senior manager, despised her. He had worked for the company for decades, climbing step by step, and now this nobody had the CEO's trust overnight. His jealousy turned to rage, and rage turned into a plan. One night, while Grace was in the break room, Collins sneaked into her office and used her computer. He sent confidential company data to a competitor, making it look like Grace was the traitor. The next morning, the entire company was buzzing. Grace was accused of leaking secrets. Her name, her integrity, everything she had worked for was about to be destroyed. But Richard believed in her. Deep down, he knew Grace's character. Together, they investigated. After days of searching, they uncovered the truth. Security logs showed Collins had accessed Grace's computer when she wasn't there. At the next board meeting, Richard called Collins out. With evidence on the screen, Grace stood tall and defended herself. "I may not have a fancy degree," she said firmly. "I may not have come from wealth, but I will never betray trust. Not at work, not in life." Silence filled the room. Collins tried to deny it, but the proof was undeniable. He was fired on the spot. For the first time, Grace was no longer seen as just a waitress. She was respected, not only by the employees but by the board itself. Over time, Grace became more than Richard's employee. She became part of his home. She helped Ethan with his Braille lessons, cooked simple meals with him, and filled the mansion with laughter it hadn't heard in years. Ethan adored her. "Dad," he said one night, "when Grace is around, the house feels warm, like Mom is smiling again." Richard felt the same, but he kept his feelings quiet at first, afraid it might be too soon, or that Grace might not feel the same way. Still, every moment they shared, from late-night talks to family dinners, pulled them closer together. One evening, Richard took Grace and Ethan to a beautiful rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. As the night air brushed against them, Richard turned to his son. "Ethan, I want to ask you something important. How would you feel if Grace became part of our family forever?" Ethan's face lit up. He reached out for Grace's hand. "That would make me the happiest boy in the world." Richard then knelt in front of Grace, holding out a small velvet box. "Grace, you healed what I thought was beyond repair. You gave me back my son. You gave me back my heart. Will you marry me?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. She asked for a week to think, but when she returned with Ethan at her side, her answer was yes. And so, the mansion that was once cold became a home filled with laughter, warmth, and love. Richard, the man who thought money could fix everything, learned that true wealth is not in bank accounts or business deals. It is in the people who stand by us, the love we share, and the kindness we show. Grace, the waitress who once struggled to pay rent, became not only a respected professional but a wife and mother, proving that a single act of compassion can change the course of destiny. And Ethan, the blind boy who longed for love, finally had what he wanted all along: a father's embrace and a mother's care. The story reminds us all, kindness costs nothing, but it can transform everything. This story reminds us that kindness can change lives in ways money never can. If it touched your heart, let me know in the comments what kindness means to you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Remember, love is the greatest gift we can give.